The letter shook so violently in my hand that I almost tore it in half. I couldn't breathe. My heart slammed so hard I felt each beat pulse angrily behind my ribs. They stole it. My own parents stole everything. My name is Harper, and tonight I learned my parents had quietly drained my grandmother's trust fund, the one safety net she'd left specifically for me, her youngest granddaughter, so I'd never have to bow to their controlling demands again. I felt sick, my throat tightening as I scanned the letter again, trying desperately to find some mistake, some misunderstanding. But the attorney's words were blunt and undeniable. The money was gone, redirected into Austin's law degree, Callie's elaborate wedding, and my parents' fancy European vacations, anything but the independent life my grandmother intended for me. The betrayal felt brutal, raw, deliberate. Suddenly, every dismissive glance, every "Oh, Harper, you're doing fine," every forgotten birthday and overlooked achievement made sense in the harshest possible light. They hadn't just ignored me, they'd methodically manipulated me, quietly ensuring I remained under their thumb. I sank to the cold kitchen floor, dropping the letter beside me, overwhelmed by waves of rage, disbelief, and a piercing sense of loss. Years of humiliation flashed before my eyes. The countless dinners spent silently watching as my parents praised Austin's football trophies, applauded Callie's promotions, and then reluctantly acknowledged me with faintly amused expressions. "Oh, Harper's here too," Mom would say with a breezy smile, as if my presence were barely noticeable. Dad's usual contribution was even worse. A quick, half-hearted nod followed by immediate disengagement. I hated that memory, the bitter taste it left in my mouth, but tonight it became fuel for something stronger than humiliation, something burning inside me that refused to be extinguished. They thought I was nothing, harmless, easy to push aside. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I'd spent years quietly building a strength they never suspected. I had built a successful career in marketing, a life they knew nothing about, achievements I'd purposely hidden to avoid their judgment and control. Tomorrow night was Callie's big promotion dinner, another painful evening of forced smiles and stifled truths. But this time, I wouldn't be invisible. Tomorrow, armed with evidence, I would confront them head-on, reveal their lies, and demand justice. I took a breath, steadying myself against the floor. Tonight, the old Harper, the quiet, obedient, invisible daughter, had vanished. Tomorrow, they'd meet someone they'd never seen coming. Before I share my full story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family. Trust me, you have no idea what they'll do once they find out the truth. I guess the truth is, invisibility didn't happen overnight. It was carefully crafted, slowly layered onto my identity, one family dinner, one forgotten milestone at a time. I spent most of my childhood and teenage years trying to understand why my parents saw Austin and Callie as golden children and me as background noise. Thinking back, I remember the school awards ceremony when I was 15. I had worked relentlessly on a community project and won first place for Young Innovators. Standing on stage, my heart pounded with pride as I scanned the crowd, searching eagerly for Mom and Dad's faces among the sea of proud parents snapping pictures and applauding loudly. But they weren't there. Later, Mom casually waved off her absence. "Oh, sweetheart, we knew you'd be fine," she said lightly, flicking her gaze back to the television. Austin's football game replay, of course. Dad didn't even look up, muttering from behind his newspaper. "Callie said you won some small thing at school today, right? Good job." Some small thing. Those words cut deeply, permanently tattooed into my memory. Every triumph after that was shadowed by the quiet expectation of indifference. I learned not to share victories at home. It hurt less if I kept them hidden. Over time, I grew accustomed to their mild neglect, always in the shadow of Callie's promotions and Austin's victories on the field. Callie, practical and polished, worked at a prestigious bank downtown. My parents adored the clarity of her predictable path. She made sense to them. Austin, their golden boy, embodied the charismatic charm of someone whose popularity was easy currency for their bragging rights. Then there was me, creative, quiet Harper, who somehow never fit neatly into their mold. I often wondered if I was born into the wrong family. I felt out of sync with their vision of success, too free-spirited for their liking, too independent to control fully. Maybe that's exactly what scared them. After high school, I'd chosen marketing, a field neither of my parents understood nor respected. Marketing? Dad had scoffed at dinner. That's what people do when they can't decide on a real career. Mom had gently but firmly added, "Are you sure, honey? You'd make such a wonderful secretary at Callie's firm." I bit down so hard my jaw ached. They didn't understand my dreams, and worse, they never tried. While they underestimated me, I quietly forged my own path. College scholarships, part-time jobs, internships, I paid my own way, fueled by quiet resentment and fierce determination. I built a career in silence, working tirelessly through early mornings and late nights, earning respect from mentors and colleagues who saw in me what my family refused to acknowledge: intelligence, creativity, and strength. But at home, I was still Harper, the overlooked daughter who attended family gatherings mostly to sit quietly and endure casual humiliations disguised as jokes or gentle teasing. Austin's new boat, Callie's designer clothes, Harper's latest thrift store find. "Oh, you really do find the most unique clothes, dear," Mom would say, her voice dripping with barely veiled disdain. Dad would chuckle, murmuring something about my quirky personality. I learned to smile through clenched teeth, silently promising myself one day they'd regret underestimating me. My secret successes became a lifeline, hidden from them, deliberately protected from their dismissive eyes. Yet no matter how much I achieved, something still felt missing: validation from the very people who had withheld it for so long. I hated myself for craving their approval, yet the longing persisted, stubborn and deep-rooted. But tonight, after discovering their theft of Grandma's legacy, something profound shifted inside me. The invisible daughter they dismissed so casually was gone. The version of me that silently accepted scraps of acknowledgement vanished forever. All that remained was a fiercely determined woman ready to reclaim her life, dignity, and independence. Tomorrow night, sitting at their dinner table, they'd finally see Harper, the daughter they never truly knew, the woman who refused to stay invisible one moment longer. They thought they controlled me, but tomorrow they'd discover just how wrong they'd always been. And I couldn't wait to watch their faces when the truth exploded into their carefully curated lives. For years, my quiet rebellion had been simmering just below the surface, carefully hidden behind polite smiles and forced family dinners. But beneath that obedient exterior, I'd been secretly carving out a reality my parents never imagined, a life built solely on my own terms. The idea hit me clearly for the first time at 19, in the tiny shared apartment where I'd lived during college. My roommate Jess had just landed a major internship at a prestigious marketing agency. Watching her celebrate, I felt a sharp, intense pang, not of envy, but of possibility. For the first time, I saw a path forward that didn't require my parents' validation or approval. "You know you can do this too, right?" Jess had said that night, sensing something beneath my quiet congratulations. "I don't know," I hesitated, suddenly feeling every ounce of my family's doubt pressing on me. Jess had turned sharply toward me, her eyes fierce with a confidence I'd never felt myself. "Harper, your family's blind. You've got talent, drive, everything it takes. Screw their approval. Go make something happen." That night, something inside me sparked into life, a quiet, defiant energy I hadn't felt before. Maybe Jess was right. I'd spent my entire life seeking approval from people who'd never fully see me. Perhaps it was time to validate myself. From that moment, I dove into marketing with quiet intensity. I read obsessively, attended every seminar I could afford, and interned relentlessly, sometimes juggling 2 or 3 roles at once. It wasn't glamorous. Long hours, constant exhaustion, barely making rent. But with every small victory, I felt stronger, more certain that my path was entirely mine. Still, I kept my success hidden from my family. It was partly pride. I refused to offer them the opportunity to dismiss my accomplishments, but mostly self-preservation. If they didn't know what I had, they couldn't take it away from me. Slowly, quietly, I began landing bigger clients, handling campaigns that surprised even seasoned professionals. One success led to another, and soon word spread. By 26, I'd quietly built a solid reputation in the industry, respected for my innovative ideas and unwavering work ethic. My phone was buzzing constantly with new opportunities, big names seeking the magic touch of Harper, the marketer nobody had seen coming. I bought myself a modest condo downtown, furnished with thrifted pieces that felt like trophies. Each worn, imperfect chair and table symbolized my quiet battle for independence, my invisible victories hidden neatly in plain sight. Yet, strangely, every family dinner still reduced me to the quiet teenager seeking approval. Each slight, each dismissive remark reignited old insecurities. I hated it. How easily they could still strip away my confidence. But breaking those invisible chains was proving harder than I'd ever imagined. Until tonight. Staring at the attorney's letter on my kitchen floor, rage and clarity finally broke through that lifelong fog. My family's betrayal was the spark that ignited everything I'd been quietly building. It sharpened my vision, giving purpose to the years of silent determination. The trust fund, Grandma's carefully planned lifeline, had been my one security against their control, a way to guarantee freedom from manipulation. Without it, my parents probably assumed I'd quietly retreat, returning obediently to the shadows they preferred me in. But they had severely underestimated Harper, the real Harper, who'd secretly built a fortress of strength behind their backs. I picked myself up from the kitchen floor, suddenly feeling taller, stronger, more powerful. Tomorrow's dinner, intended as another humiliation session thinly disguised as a celebration for Callie, would instead become my stage. I'd confront them head-on, exposing not only their betrayal but also my own undeniable success. I imagined their faces, the shock, the disbelief, the sudden realization of how completely they'd underestimated me, and I felt a fierce satisfaction. Revenge, I decided, wasn't just sweet. It was necessary, it was justice. With shaking hands, I neatly folded the attorney's letter, tucking it into my purse beside tomorrow's carefully organized evidence, contracts, awards, glowing testimonials, all proving beyond a shadow of doubt that I was not the failure they'd assumed. Tonight, the invisible girl finally vanished for good, replaced by someone they'd never seen before. Harper, the strong, capable, determined woman who'd built a life despite them. And tomorrow at the dinner table, I'd finally show them exactly who that was. The next day passed in a blur of anxiety, anticipation, and something new, powerful, exhilarating certainty. I barely noticed the normal chaos at my office, distracted by the ticking clock and the undeniable shift I felt within myself. For the first time, I wasn't attending one of my family's carefully staged dinners as their silent, invisible Harper. Tonight, I'd finally show them exactly who they'd ignored for so long. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, running my hands nervously down the smooth fabric of the dress I'd chosen. It was simple, yet confident, something they'd never expect me to wear. My reflection looked back at me, unfamiliar yet welcome, as though I was meeting myself for the first time. Was this what freedom felt like? The buzz of a text interrupted my thoughts. Jess's message appeared on my screen, simple but fierce. "You got this, Harp. Make them regret every dismissive word." I smiled. She understood better than anyone the stakes of tonight's dinner. Jess had witnessed years of frustration, comforting me after countless family events left me bruised emotionally and battered by their subtle contempt. But tonight wouldn't be another silent battle. Tonight was about justice, reclaiming what my parents stole, both financially and emotionally. The attorney's letter, carefully tucked in my purse alongside undeniable proof of my achievements, felt heavy with promise. Driving toward my parents' house, my heartbeat quickened. Memories flooded back, each street reminding me of childhood invisibility, teenage neglect, endless evenings pretending their subtle cruelty didn't hurt. By the time I pulled into their familiar driveway, anxiety nearly choked me. Inside, everything was predictably perfect. Mom's spotless table arrangement, Dad's rehearsed welcome, Callie's smug laughter echoing from the dining room. My arrival went largely unnoticed, as always. "Harper, how nice you made it," Mom finally said, glancing quickly over my dress with a slightly raised eyebrow. Dad nodded absently, already distracted by Austin's loud retelling of a recent legal victory. As I took my usual seat, I felt the familiar burn of resentment rise, but this time I didn't suppress it. Instead, I allowed the heat to sharpen my focus. Conversation quickly turned to Callie's promotion, no surprise. Mom practically glowed with pride, gushing about Callie's impeccable career trajectory, her hard-earned successes. "It's so wonderful when a child actually lives up to their potential," Mom said pointedly, casting a brief, critical glance my way. The table erupted in laughter, the barb hitting me squarely as intended. I clenched my jaw, steadying my breath. She had no idea what potential I'd quietly fulfilled behind their backs. "I guess not everyone can be a Callie," Austin chimed in, grinning at me with thinly disguised mockery. Dad chuckled lightly, adding fuel to the fire. "True, Harper's always marched to her own, slower drum." Their laughter felt sharp, familiar, brutal. But beneath the humiliation, something new stirred. Defiance. Tonight wasn't going according to their script. Quietly, deliberately, I reached for my purse, feeling the crisp edges of the evidence inside. My hands trembled slightly, but determination steadied my voice. "You're right," I finally said clearly, cutting through their laughter. The table fell abruptly silent. "I'm not Callie or Austin, but I've done pretty well on my own terms, no thanks to any of you." Mom's face froze mid-smile, confusion and irritation flashing across her carefully maintained expression. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Harper, let's not." "No," I interrupted firmly, shocking even myself. "We should, because I finally learned what you've been hiding." Mom shifted nervously. Austin glanced at Callie, confusion evident. Dad's expression hardened into quiet anger. "What exactly are you accusing us of?" Calmly, deliberately, I placed the attorney's letter on the table, sliding it toward him. My voice felt strong, steady, entirely my own. "The trust fund Grandma left for my independence, you drained it, every penny, and you've lied to me for years about it." Stunned silence filled the room. Mom went pale, hands visibly shaking as she reached to steady herself. Austin and Callie exchanged panicked glances, but it was Dad's reaction that shook me the most. Anger quickly shifting to startled fear, the mask of authority slipping from his face for the first time ever. The air grew thick with tension, the power shifting palpably. I looked around, finally unafraid, finally visible. They saw me clearly now, not as their quiet disappointment, but as someone they couldn't dismiss any longer. And I knew, from their terrified expressions, that tonight would forever change our carefully choreographed family dynamic. They'd spent decades underestimating me, but tonight marked the beginning of the end for their lies, and the start of my true independence. The silence was thick, oppressive, as the realization of what I'd exposed settled over the dinner table. I felt every heartbeat thudding inside me, adrenaline pulsing hot beneath my skin. But for once, I wasn't afraid. I was angry, fierce, and entirely in control. Dad was first to recover, his voice shaking slightly, betraying him. "Harper, this is neither the time nor the place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the right time." I shot back evenly, leaning forward slightly, feeling every eye locked on me. "Since you've spent my entire life controlling when and how I speak, maybe tonight you'll finally listen." Mom's eyes darted nervously toward the guests, her usual careful composure cracking beneath the weight of embarrassment. "Sweetheart," she forced a strained laugh, "you've clearly misunderstood. Why don't we discuss this privately?" "There's nothing to misunderstand," I interrupted firmly, my voice clear and unwavering. "Grandma's trust fund wasn't meant for Callie's lavish wedding, or Austin's law degree, or your vacations. It was for me, to ensure I'd never be under your thumb again, and you stole it." The shocked gasps from nearby guests filled me with cold satisfaction. Callie's perfect composure cracked for the first time, her cheeks flushed deep red, and Austin suddenly found something incredibly fascinating about his dinner plate. "You're causing a scene, Harper," Mom hissed, her smile tight with forced dignity. "A scene?" I laughed bitterly, feeling years of frustration and humiliation spill over. "Mom, you've made my entire life a scene. Every dinner, every gathering, I've sat quietly while you've all insulted me, belittled my career, pretended I wasn't worthy. I'm done pretending." Dad's jaw tightened. "Be careful, Harper, you're still part of this family." I met his gaze steadily, disdain rolling through me like a powerful wave. "Am I? Because you've spent years making sure I felt like anything but family." A long, uncomfortable pause followed. Then Austin smirked weakly, trying to lighten the crushing tension. "Come on, Harper, don't be dramatic, we're all family here." His condescending tone sparked a new fury inside me. "Family?" I spat the word out, incredulous. "Austin, when's the last time you treated me like family? Was it when you joked about my career choice? Or was it when you pretended not to know me at your firm's event because I wasn't important enough?" He went silent, shrinking visibly into his chair. Callie cleared her throat, attempting to restore some sense of authority. "Harper, honestly, you've always misunderstood our intentions." I cut her off sharply. "Callie, You're not misunderstood. You're manipulative. All of you have spent my life gaslighting me, making me feel invisible, worthless, insignificant. And tonight, everyone sees exactly who you are." A tense murmur rippled through the guests, their eyes shifting between my stunned family and my resolute face. I could practically hear Mom's panicked thoughts, desperate to save face, to maintain her carefully curated illusion of perfection. Suddenly, she stood, her voice rising with a brittle edge of authority. "Enough, Harper. Clearly you've chosen to reject our family values. If you refuse to respect this family, then perhaps you no longer belong." The cruelty in her voice was unmistakable, calculated to wound deeply publicly. But this time, instead of shattering me, it freed me. Finally, clearly, brutally, I saw exactly who they were, and more importantly, I saw myself for the first time without their distorted lens. I rose slowly, deliberately, meeting her gaze with a cold intensity I'd never felt before. "You're right, I don't belong here, not anymore, because unlike you, I refuse to live a lie." Turning toward the guests, I felt an unexpected wave of courage. "I apologize for disrupting your evening, but honestly, someone had to finally tell the truth about this family." The stunned silence around the table was broken only by the quiet scrape of my chair as I pushed it back. Mom's eyes flashed with panic, Dad's mouth opened in shock, but I no longer cared what they thought. For the first time ever, their opinions held no power over me. Walking away from that table was the hardest and easiest thing I'd ever done. Each step felt liberating, powerful, unstoppable. They'd expected quiet submission, but tonight, they finally met the Harper they'd underestimated her entire life. At the front door, I paused for one final glance. Their stunned expressions, their humiliating public exposure, felt deliciously satisfying. More satisfying than I'd ever dared imagine. Tonight, the invisible daughter had not only reclaimed her voice, but also her dignity. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I realized something profound. My family had tried to break me. But instead, they'd created the strongest version of Harper yet. And I was only just getting started. Outside, the cool air hit my face, startlingly fresh and soothing compared to the stifling atmosphere I'd just left behind. My heart thundered with fierce satisfaction, adrenaline still coursing through me, mixing with the faint disbelief that I'd actually stood up to my family. Finally. I dreamed about this moment for so long, but the reality felt even better than any revenge fantasy I'd ever allowed myself. Every dismissive comment, every carefully delivered insult they'd casually tossed at me had come crashing back on them in a single, undeniable truth. Tonight was their humiliation, their public exposure, and my sweet, long-awaited justice. As I walked toward my car, I felt my phone buzzing insistently in my purse. Pulling it out, I saw Jess's name flashing on the screen. "Well?" she asked the second I answered. Her voice was tense, eager, hopeful. "Did you do it?" "I did it," I breathed, laughing lightly as relief washed over me. "I really did." She let out an excited cheer. "I knew you could, Harper. How did they react?" I leaned against my car, my voice shaking slightly as adrenaline faded into exhaustion. "Exactly like you'd imagine. Shocked, defensive, angry, then completely humiliated." "Good," Jess said fiercely. "They deserved every bit of it." Her validation filled me with warmth, a stark contrast to the emotional chill I'd lived with for so long at home. But as we spoke, my phone beeped again. Another call coming through, this one unknown. "Hey, I have another call," I said to Jess, curious yet wary. "I'll call you back, okay?" "Don't leave me hanging long," she laughed, disconnecting quickly. I answered hesitantly. "Hello?" A woman's voice, crisp and official, came through the line. "Harper, this is Amanda Wells from Dalton and Finch, your grandmother's estate attorneys. I apologize for calling so late, but I just received some important documentation related to your case." My pulse jumped sharply. "What documentation?" She cleared her throat, professional yet kind. "It appears your grandmother had anticipated something like this might happen. She left very specific instructions in her will. Your parents' access to the funds was conditional. They were explicitly forbidden from using it without your direct consent. Legally, Harper, you're entitled to reclaim every cent they misappropriated." My heart thundered against my ribs, breath hitching painfully. "Wait, so they broke the terms?" "Exactly," she confirmed, firm yet empathetic. "They didn't just deceive you. They committed clear financial misconduct. If you choose to pursue this, you have a very strong legal case." Shock swept over me, closely followed by a fierce satisfaction more intense than anything I'd yet experienced. My grandmother had known. She'd suspected my parents' greed and protected me even beyond her death. Gratitude surged through me, mingling with determination so powerful it took my breath away. "I want to pursue it," I said without hesitation, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I refuse to let them get away with what they've done." "Then let's schedule a meeting first thing tomorrow," Amanda replied confidently. "It's time they faced consequences." Ending the call, I stood in stunned silence, processing the reality of my newfound power. Not only had I confronted them, but I also had legal leverage, undeniable proof of their betrayal, and my entitlement to reclaim everything they'd stolen. The victory tonight had felt incredible, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. A movement from the house caught my eye. Through the curtains, I glimpsed my family still seated around the dinner table, faces pale and tense, arguing silently. Even from this distance, I saw clearly the damage I'd inflicted, their humiliation raw, their careful facade utterly destroyed. A small smile curved my lips. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice, fair, powerful, and long overdue. I slid into my car, taking a deep, steadying breath, savoring every second of this moment. My family had thought they'd won, believed they'd permanently confined me to their carefully crafted cage of invisibility. But tonight, I'd broken out in the most spectacular public way possible, and tomorrow, they'd face the legal reckoning they deserved. Pulling away from their driveway, I felt stronger than ever before. Free, unstoppable, and deeply empowered. My grandmother's hidden protections, my own secret success, the satisfaction of finally seeing my family humbled, each victory layered on top of the last, creating a foundation so solid nothing could ever shake it. Tonight had changed everything. Tomorrow would solidify it. I was no longer Harper, the invisible forgotten daughter. I was Harper, the powerful, independent woman finally reclaiming her voice, her legacy, and her freedom, and nothing felt sweeter or more deserved. The morning arrived bright and sharp, sunlight piercing through my bedroom curtains with unfamiliar optimism. Last night's confrontation felt surreal, dreamlike, yet the lingering power I felt confirmed its reality. Today, everything would officially change. I drove to Amanda Wells' office early, determination making my hands steady despite the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. Walking through the polished doors of Dalton and Finch, my heartbeat quickened. Not from fear, but anticipation. For the first time, I wasn't here because my parents sent me or needed me to comply quietly. Today, I was here purely for myself. Amanda greeted me warmly, her professional composure tempered by genuine compassion. "Harper, thanks for coming so early. Let's get right to it." Inside her bright office, folders were spread neatly across a large conference table. She handed me a thick file, clearly marked with my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "As we discussed last night, your grandmother anticipated potential trouble. She specifically added conditions to the trust. Your parents ignored those conditions, essentially stealing from you. Legally, you have significant leverage." I flipped through the papers, heart swelling at Grandma's meticulous instructions. Her protective words, carefully crafted, stood boldly on each page, a legacy of love and foresight. "What happens next?" I asked quietly, strength threading through my voice. Amanda's expression hardened with resolve. "We start with a formal notice. Given the strength of your evidence, your parents will have very limited options. They'll either return the stolen funds immediately or face significant legal consequences." A surge of fierce satisfaction rushed through me, mingled strangely with sadness. It felt surreal, but right. My parents had spent decades controlling and dismissing me. Now, their manipulation would finally come crashing down around them. "Send it today," I instructed calmly, feeling powerful in a way I'd never imagined possible. "I won't back down." Amanda smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "You shouldn't. You deserve every bit of justice coming your way." When I stepped back onto the street, something fundamental had shifted. The city around me buzzed with ordinary activity, but I felt different, stronger, taller, visible in a way I'd never allowed myself to feel before. Returning home, I found a string of frantic messages waiting. Callie, even Austin. I ignored them, smiling slightly as I scrolled past each desperate pleading apology, every hollow justification. They'd always been masters at manipulation, but today their attempts felt pathetic and transparent. Then my phone rang, displaying Mom's number. I hesitated only briefly before answering, my voice steady and cool. "Harper, please." Mom's voice trembled, desperation clear. "We made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I echoed sharply, cutting through her carefully rehearsed speech. Stealing my inheritance and gaslighting me my entire life were deliberate choices. Don't insult me by calling them mistakes. Silence hung thickly, broken finally by her quiet admission. "We didn't think you'd ever find out. We thought we were doing what was best." "What was best for you, not me," I interrupted, clarity slicing through her words. "You took from me because you never respected me enough to let me control my own life." She paused, choking slightly on her words. "Harper, please, the family reputation." "Oh, your reputation is exactly why you'll pay every penny back," I stated, calm and unyielding. "You care about appearances? Then accept the consequences of your actions publicly. You stole from your own daughter, and now everyone will know exactly who you are." "Harper, I'm done listening," I snapped. "You've spent my entire life silencing me. Now it's your turn to be quiet and face reality." Ending the call felt liberating, empowering. For the first time I'd held power completely on my terms, unwavering, unapologetic. And I knew there was no turning back. I spent the afternoon reflecting, gradually coming to terms with the depth of betrayal I'd endured, but also the incredible resilience it had forged in me. Every humiliation, every stolen opportunity, had built something within me stronger than I'd ever realized. My parents' cruelty had inadvertently created a woman unafraid to stand on her own, demand respect, and reclaim justice with relentless determination. By evening, news of my legal action spread quickly, igniting my phone with supportive calls and texts from unexpected places. Relatives who'd witnessed my quiet suffering but stayed silent. Colleagues shocked yet impressed by my courage. Even old friends who'd sensed the truth but never spoken up. The validation, long overdue, filled me with profound gratitude, reinforcing that I was finally seen clearly. That night, alone yet content in my peaceful condo, I raised a quiet toast to my grandmother's picture on the mantel. She'd protected me even beyond her lifetime, her foresight now my shield. I whispered softly, deeply grateful, "Thank you, Grandma. I promise to honor your legacy." Tomorrow would bring the next chapter, public reckoning, legal justice, and undeniable independence. But tonight, I basked in victory, fully understanding for the first time the power of finally reclaiming my life, dignity, and strength. My family had no idea what they'd unleashed. Over the next few days, my family's carefully constructed facade began to crumble publicly, piece by painful piece. Gossip spread quickly, fueled by disbelief, shock, and scandal. It wasn't exactly enjoyable watching my family's humiliation play out publicly, but it was satisfying and deeply justified. The formal notice from Dalton and Finch forced my parents into the open. Faced with undeniable legal consequences, their pristine image collapsed spectacularly. Suddenly, the respected community leaders, admired parents, and successful socialites were exposed as thieves who had stolen from their own daughter. But more importantly, people finally saw me, not as the quiet, insignificant daughter, but as someone strong enough to confront injustice and stand firm, even against family. My inbox overflowed with supportive messages, validating that what I'd done wasn't just brave, it was necessary. Then came the unexpected knock at my door late one evening. Callie stood there, her usually perfect appearance frayed, eyes red-rimmed from crying. My first instinct was to slam the door shut, but something stopped me, the faintest hint of genuine remorse in her eyes. "Harper, can we talk?" she asked quietly, vulnerability evident in her voice for the first time ever. I stepped back silently, allowing her in, maintaining a cautious distance. She sat awkwardly on the edge of my couch, twisting her expensive watch nervously. "I didn't know," she started weakly. "At least not fully. They always told me you had everything you needed, that you were just difficult, stubborn." I scoffed bitterly, arms crossed defensively. "You chose to believe that because it was easier." She winced visibly, eyes glistening with tears. "I did. I didn't want to see the truth, Harper. I was selfish. It was easier pretending everything was fine, letting you suffer quietly rather than facing what was really happening." The honesty caught me off guard, her vulnerability genuine and raw. Still, I hesitated. "Why are you here now?" Because I'm ashamed, she admitted softly, voice cracking. And because someone needs to finally apologize to you properly. It should have happened years ago. Emotion surged in my chest, complicated by years of pain and resentment. But beneath it all there was a glimmer of hope, recognition I'd secretly craved for so long. I watched them humiliate you, she continued quietly, tears spilling openly now. I watched you become invisible. And I did nothing. I'm sorry, Harper. Truly, you deserved so much better. For the first time I believed her. Not fully, not yet. But enough to let a sliver of forgiveness seep in. I sighed softly, nodding slowly. Thank you for finally saying it, I whispered. It doesn't erase the pain, but it means something. She offered a tentative, watery smile, and for a moment we sat quietly in the delicate peace of new honesty. Days later, the legal proceedings moved quickly, resolved decisively in my favor. My parents, cornered by evidence and public opinion, returned every penny they'd stolen. Their public apology was stiff, insincere, and clearly forced by their attorneys. But the victory was undeniable. Justice was served, publicly and unequivocally. Watching their apology broadcast across the local news felt surreal, but deeply gratifying. The power had officially shifted. They were now the humiliated ones, the family who'd sacrificed dignity and reputation through greed and manipulation. I was no longer the victim. I was the survivor who had reclaimed her strength and independence with dignity intact. In the aftermath, I allowed myself space to heal. Quiet evenings, long walks, reconnecting with genuine friends who'd stood by me through everything. My world gradually filled with authentic warmth and respect. Jess joked that I was now Harper 2.0, stronger and more confident than ever before. One evening, reflecting alone on the balcony of my condo, I smiled softly, acknowledging the profound changes within me. I was no longer bound by their toxic definitions or constrained by their expectations. Instead, I had fully reclaimed my own narrative, redefining success, happiness, and family entirely on my own terms. My parents' humiliation wasn't just justice. It was closure. It was the necessary painful ending to years of emotional manipulation and quiet cruelty. The humiliation I'd once feared, I now fully understood as their rightful consequence. Standing there, looking out over the glowing cityscape, my heart swelled with gratitude. For Jess, for Amanda, for Grandma's unwavering foresight, and even strangely, for the painful journey itself. My parents had unintentionally created something strong, resilient, and unbreakable in me. Tonight, finally free of their toxic control, I realized that true revenge wasn't just in their humiliation, it was in my liberation, the quiet, powerful dignity of reclaiming my life completely. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter, one built purely on authenticity and strength. But tonight, I allowed myself the sweet, quiet satisfaction of justice, feeling utterly free, undeniably visible, and fiercely proud. For the first time, I knew exactly who Harper truly was, and I loved her. After everything unraveled publicly, the contrast between my old family and my new chosen family became crystal clear. While my biological family struggled with the fallout, quietly retreating from their social circles to lick their wounds, I was embraced warmly by the people who truly mattered, my real family, born from authentic connections, trust, and loyalty. Jess organized a small dinner party at her place, insisting we celebrate my liberation and the reclaiming of my grandmother's legacy. Sitting at her cozy dining table surrounded by smiling faces, colleagues who'd become close friends, old college roommates, even Amanda Wells, I finally understood the genuine meaning of family. Jess raised her glass, eyes bright with pride. To Harper, the bravest, strongest woman we know, you've taught us all what courage looks like. The table erupted in cheers, laughter ringing warmly around me. Tears filled my eyes, gratitude spilling over as I looked at each person who had stood by me unconditionally. Later that night, Amanda caught me alone on the balcony, gently touching my arm. "You should be proud, Harper," she said sincerely. "Your grandmother would have been so incredibly proud." I nodded slowly, the ache in my chest bittersweet but healing. I hope she knows what she gave me, beyond just money. She gave me the strength to finally stand up for myself. Amanda smiled knowingly. "Oh, she definitely knew. She believed in you completely. She saw your potential even when your parents refused to." The realization filled me with quiet joy, softening old wounds. Grandma's legacy wasn't just financial security. It was unconditional belief, the unwavering trust that I was strong enough to reclaim my life. days turned into weeks, and the support from my chosen family only grew stronger. Colleagues reached out eagerly, inspired by my courage, asking for advice on handling their own difficult family situations. I found myself becoming a reluctant but passionate advocate, encouraging others to find their voice, set boundaries, and seek justice when deserved. Surprisingly, Callie stayed in touch, cautiously rebuilding our relationship one careful conversation at a time. Austin, though quieter, sent occasional texts acknowledging how wrong he'd been. I allowed myself to cautiously accept these small steps, careful not to reopen old wounds, but grateful that genuine growth seemed possible. My parents, however, remained distant. Occasionally, I heard through the grapevine that they were attempting to rebuild their shattered reputations, crafting carefully vague narratives about misunderstandings and mistakes. But the community's judgment was firm, their social exile a clear reflection of their betrayal. Karma had finally delivered justice. Still, rather than dwell on their downfall, I focused forward. Empowered by my victory, I launched new projects at work, channeling my reclaimed strength into even greater successes. The story of my struggle and triumph spread rapidly, transforming my personal narrative into something broader, something powerful that resonated deeply with others. One afternoon, Jess found me sorting through old boxes in my condo, carefully pulling out items from my past, letters from Grandma, photographs, awards I'd hidden away to avoid provoking my parents' criticism. Jess gently picked up one of the letters, scanning it with a tender smile. "She knew exactly who you were, Harper," she whispered, emotion evident in her voice. "She saw your strength from the beginning." I nodded, holding back tears. "I wish I'd believed in myself sooner." Jess placed a comforting hand on mine. "You had to fight your way here, but look at you now. You're unstoppable." Her words settled deeply within me, powerful and true. I was unstoppable, not because I had defeated my family, but because I'd finally embraced who I was without their toxic expectations. That evening, alone again in my peaceful condo, I reflected on the remarkable transformation my life had undergone. Once trapped in silence, invisible and undervalued, I now stood surrounded by love, respect, and genuine understanding. The stark contrast filled me with profound gratitude. My chosen family was proof that blood alone didn't define connection. True family showed up, stood strong, and held space for your growth without judgment. True family celebrated your victories and stood fiercely by your side in moments of darkness. Smiling softly, I placed Grandma's photograph prominently on my mantel beside a candid picture from Jess's dinner party. The two images represented the entirety of my journey, where I'd come from and where I'd arrived. Both represented real, unconditional love. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities, fresh challenges, and a lifetime of genuine relationships. But tonight, content in my newfound clarity and peace, I felt profoundly grateful to finally understand the meaning of family, truly chosen, fiercely loyal, beautifully authentic. And in that moment, Harper, the daughter once invisible, finally knew she was genuinely, undeniably seen and loved for exactly who she was. The boundaries I set in the aftermath of the legal showdown were clear, deliberate, and unshakable. For the first time, my life felt genuinely mine, not filtered through someone else's expectations or clouded by their manipulations. And while setting these boundaries initially felt difficult, each step became easier, reinforcing my newfound strength and independence. My parents predictably resisted. They tried repeatedly to reach out, testing the edges of my resolve. Texts pleading for forgiveness, phone calls masked as genuine remorse, even handwritten letters attempting to rewrite history. Each attempt felt more desperate than the last, their tone increasingly frantic, as if they were slowly realizing the permanence of what they'd lost. I refused every effort firmly and clearly, replying only once, directly and simply, "I deserve peace. You no longer have permission to disrupt it." Their silence afterward was deafening, but deeply satisfying. Callie and Austin slowly learned my new boundaries as well. Our interactions, once strained and tense, became cautiously respectful. Callie especially seemed committed to proving her sincerity, navigating the new lines I drew with thoughtful care. Austin remained quietly supportive from afar, occasionally sending respectful messages of encouragement. Our relationships evolved carefully, now guided by respect and accountability rather than manipulation and dismissal. With my new clarity and confidence, I redirected energy fully into my career, embracing bigger opportunities and taking calculated risks I previously would have feared. Invitations poured in to speak at events, share my experiences, and empower others facing similar struggles. Each time I stepped onto a stage or into a room full of people eager to listen, my heart swelled with fierce gratitude. My once hidden voice now resonated powerfully, inspiring others to reclaim their lives too. And as I grew, I carefully watched the consequences unfold for those who'd wronged me. My parents faced genuine isolation, their social standing irreparably damaged. Without the masks of their carefully crafted image, they struggled, exposed to harsh judgment from the same community they'd once manipulated effortlessly. Yet despite seeing their suffering clearly, I felt no guilt or hesitation. This was their consequence, the direct result of their deliberate choices. My compassion had limits, carefully balanced by the reality of justice. They'd caused pain willingly, knowingly. Their suffering was the price they'd earned. Meanwhile, Jess became my rock, helping me navigate every new opportunity with wisdom and fierce encouragement. Our friendship, deepened by shared history and unconditional support, became an unbreakable bond, a constant reminder of the beauty that could arise from genuine connection. One evening, Jess and I sat quietly on my balcony sipping wine, watching the sunset soften the cityscape. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly, glancing curiously at me. I shook my head without hesitation. "Not for 1 second. It was painful. Still is sometimes. But setting those boundaries gave me my life back. I finally feel free." Jess smiled warmly, nodding thoughtfully. "Good, because you deserve that freedom more than anyone I know." Her words settled warmly into my heart, confirming everything I'd fought for. Boundaries weren't about punishment, they were about protection, about finally putting myself first without apology, and every day I reinforced them, my peace grew stronger, my joy more genuine. In the days that followed, a sense of quiet confidence filled my life completely. I felt lighter, more capable, more myself than I'd ever imagined possible. The pain of my past was now a source of power, an unshakable foundation, reminding me of the strength I possessed to build something beautiful from ashes. My family's betrayal no longer defined me, it freed me, clearly illuminating the importance of living authentically, setting clear boundaries, and refusing to compromise self-respect for anyone else's approval. Standing before an audience at a major event a few weeks later, I saw a familiar face in the crowd, Callie, smiling gently from a respectful distance. Her presence no longer felt threatening or complicated. Instead, it reinforced something powerful within me. The clarity that boundaries brought to every relationship, even the most painful ones. Closing my speech, I said firmly, voice strong and clear, "Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors we choose to open or close. They protect us, empower us, and define us. Set them fiercely and without apology because your peace is worth everything." The applause was loud, affirming, heartfelt, echoing warmly around me. As I stepped down, embracing Jess tightly backstage, I felt profound gratitude. For everything I'd endured, for every boundary I'd bravely drawn, and for the beautiful freedom I now enjoyed fully. My family's betrayal had unintentionally gifted me the most valuable thing imaginable: true independence, fierce self-respect, and authentic happiness. And as I walked confidently forward, finally free, I knew I'd never compromise those precious boundaries again. With my newfound freedom and success, I realized quickly that reclaiming my legacy meant more than simply taking back stolen money or publicly exposing my family. It was about redefining success on my own terms, turning the pain of betrayal into something meaningful and positive. My grandmother's legacy became my inspiration. I poured myself into honoring her memory, using the reclaimed inheritance not just to build personal wealth, but to create meaningful change for others who faced manipulation or neglect. Partnering with Amanda Wells and her law firm, I established a foundation dedicated to helping young adults fight financial and emotional abuse within their families. Our first fundraiser was a powerful success, drawing attention from across the community and beyond. Standing at the podium that evening, looking out at a crowd gathered specifically to support my vision, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment and purpose. Afterward, Amanda found me by the refreshments table, her eyes shining with pride. "Harper, look what you've done. Look what you've built from your pain." I couldn't have done it without you, I replied warmly. Or Grandma, or everyone who believed in me when I barely believed in myself. She smiled knowingly. Your grandmother knew exactly who she was leaving this legacy to. You've proven her right 1,000 times over. That night, quietly back at home, I pulled out an old photograph of Grandma, gently tracing her smiling face. Tears blurred my vision slightly, but they were tears of gratitude, not sadness. I hope you're proud, I whispered softly, feeling deeply connected to her. You taught me what strength really is. In the weeks that followed, my foundation quickly grew in recognition. Messages poured in from people across the country who saw their own stories reflected in mine, who felt inspired to reclaim their own lives. Each story filled me with profound gratitude, reminding me exactly why this work mattered so deeply. Jess became a permanent part of my efforts, enthusiastically helping organize events, connect with communities, and provide emotional support to survivors. Our friendship deepened even more, rooted now in shared purpose and commitment to making a difference. One afternoon, as we prepared for an upcoming event, Jess paused, thoughtful and curious. Did you ever imagine this is where you'd end up? I laughed lightly, shaking my head. Never. Honestly, I used to imagine success meant finally proving something to my family, but now success is this, knowing my life is meaningful, authentic, and completely mine. She squeezed my hand affectionately. It suits you perfectly, Harper. As the foundation grew, my professional success expanded alongside it. Invitations to speak, mentor, and collaborate poured in, each offering another opportunity to spread the powerful message I'd learned firsthand. That true strength came from refusing to compromise your dignity, no matter how painful the consequences seemed at first. Even Callie joined one of our events eventually, quietly supporting from the background. Watching her applaud genuinely, tears quietly slipping down her face as survivors shared their stories, I felt a sense of quiet reconciliation, still cautious but sincere. Maybe we'd never fully heal our family bond, but I respected the steps she was taking toward genuine accountability. My parents, meanwhile, remained distant shadows of my past. Occasionally, whispers about their continued isolation surfaced, stories of attempts at rebuilding their damaged image, always failing spectacularly. But I rarely gave it thought anymore. Their choices no longer defined my narrative. Instead, I celebrated each life impacted by my work, each survivor who felt less alone, each voice finally heard and validated. My own painful journey had become a catalyst, turning betrayal and suffering into empowerment and compassion. Late one evening, reflecting quietly on my balcony, I felt an incredible sense of peace wash over me. Below, the city lights glittered gently, symbolic of all the possibilities I'd finally embraced. Grandma's trust, once stolen and now reclaimed, had become a foundation for good, her legacy alive, vibrant, powerful, in ways my parents could never have imagined. Looking out, I knew with certainty that the best revenge was not in their humiliation. Though satisfying, it was in the positive impact I'd created despite their cruelty. Every boundary set, every victory celebrated, every life touched was a testament to my strength and resilience. I closed my eyes briefly, smiling softly, finally free of bitterness or regret. Tomorrow would bring fresh opportunities, new challenges, and infinite potential for even greater change. Tonight, I simply basked in gratitude, proud of how far I'd come, grateful for the strength to redefine success entirely on my terms. Harper, the invisible daughter, the overlooked child, had become Harper the advocate, the empowered woman, the fierce protector of dignity. My legacy, fully reclaimed and clearly defined, was finally and completely mine. In the quiet months after the whirlwind of justice and liberation, I finally discovered what peace truly felt like. It wasn't the absence of pain, nor the erasure of past betrayals, but rather the profound realization of my inherent worth, independent of anyone's judgment. One afternoon, sorting through old belongings, I came across a notebook I'd kept as a teenager. Flipping through the pages, my heart ached softly at the notes scribbled in desperate, hopeful handwriting. Page after page revealed a young Harper yearning to be noticed, aching for validation from a family that refused to see her clearly. But today, looking at that notebook, I felt no sadness, only compassion for the young woman I once was, fiercely proud of the woman I'd become. The journey had been painful, often unbearably so, Yet every moment of struggle had forged a resilience and dignity in me that no one could ever take away again. Jess found me later, notebook still open in my hands, tears gently tracing down my cheeks. "You okay?" she asked softly, sitting quietly beside me. "I'm better than okay," I whispered, smiling through the tears. "I'm finally exactly who I was always supposed to be." She squeezed my shoulder gently, warmth radiating from her touch. "I always saw her, Harper, even when you couldn't yet see yourself." Her words filled me with quiet gratitude. Jess had stood by me relentlessly, witnessing every high and low with unwavering faith. Her friendship, alongside the incredible network of genuine allies now surrounding me, made every painful step toward independence entirely worth it. Now, instead of chasing approval or acceptance from others, I understood deeply that my worth was inherent, undeniable, needing validation from no one but myself. This understanding had become the foundation upon which my entire life stood firmly, beautifully secure. My parents' betrayal no longer haunted me. Instead, it served as a powerful reminder of the strength I possessed to overcome even the most painful experiences. Their cruelty had unintentionally become my greatest teacher, pushing me fiercely into the truth of my own resilience. One evening, preparing to speak at another event for my foundation, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My reflection revealed not just physical strength, but a quiet confidence born from authenticity. The woman staring back at me was someone unshakable, compassionate, fierce, yet gentle. Someone finally at peace. Standing before the gathered audience later, my voice carried clearly and passionately, sharing openly the lessons I'd learned from my painful journey. We spend so much of our lives trying desperately to fit others' expectations, sacrificing our own peace to gain fleeting approval. But true peace, true validation, never comes from outside. It blossoms only when we fully accept who we truly are. The audience nodded gently, visibly moved, recognizing the universal truth in my words. As I concluded, I paused thoughtfully, scanning faces full of hope, strength, and newfound clarity. Have you ever felt invisible, like your voice didn't matter? Like your family or society tried to define who you should be? I asked gently, sincerely. You're not alone. Share your stories below. Tell me your journey. If my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. The applause that erupted was loud, affirming, emotional. Afterward, countless individuals approached me, sharing quietly how deeply my words had touched their hearts, giving them courage to face their own struggles, their own painful journeys toward self-validation. Back home, finally alone, quiet contentment settled around me like a warm, protective embrace. Standing again on my balcony, looking out over the lights below, I took a deep breath, savoring every moment of this newfound peace. Grandma's photograph smiled gently from the mantel inside, beside pictures of Jess, Amanda, and everyone else who'd become my true family. My heart felt profoundly full, entirely healed from past wounds. My parents had meant to break me, but instead they'd gifted me strength, independence, and true self-awareness. Their betrayal had inadvertently set me free, free to finally become exactly who I was always meant to be. Smiling softly, I whispered quietly into the peaceful night air, "This is peace, this is freedom, and no one can ever take it away again."